Coming up on Finance and Technology Insights, Brian and I talk about ESG investing and the robo taxis of the future. They're coming, whether you like it or not. Stay tuned. So what's going on and what are you finding interesting in the news these days?
Well,
Anything?
yeah, I mean, we could cover all the big ones. You touched on the big layoffs. Elon Musk and FTX are the big ones. But something came out yesterday that I'll share here briefly. That's a little more industry specific. That I thought we've touched on this before, and we've talked about this as far as ESG, and that's the environmental and socially conscious stuff. So that sort of plays in the finance and technology world. And unfortunately, it became a bit of a political issue where you had some very large pensions in let's say left-leaning states make decisions based on environmental and social conscious and governance issues, and then you had states and pensions that were more on the right do certain things and the exact opposite, and then that filtered down to individual 401k plans. And then you had one administration that said you absolutely should be factoring this into building your investment lineup for your employees. And then you had an administration that said you absolutely should not be using this as a factor to select investments. So this came through yesterday. Some guidance from the Department of Labor that was really the right wording. It just says fiduciaries may, but they don't have to consider environmental and socially conscious issues. So you're not going to be penalized if you have these type of funds, and you're not going to be penalized if you don't. But it's just something of ultimately it's an art to put together an investment list and not a science. So if as a business, as a fiduciary to your employees, you feel that companies that focus on environmental issues, let's say, for example, are going to be industry leaders, therefore will outperform and therefore will produce outsized returns for your employees, then you can factor that in. If you feel the opposite and you want to exclude them, then that's fine too. The other interesting piece on here was talks about participant preferences. So even if you run a business and you've got 20 employees and all 20 employees bang on your door and say, we want environmentally and socially conscious funds, you essentially can't cave into that pressure, and their participant preferences shouldn't affect your decisions in pulling out a plan lineup. So I know it's kind of industry specific and kind of nerdy.
I really want to deep dive on this if you're willing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we can get into this a little bit more, but it's a very so I'm on this NAPA site, which is National Association of Plan Advisors, and when you click on the news, it's going to be so it's going to be some general blogging stuff, but typically you will not get through this page without seeing some type of so without looking ahead here, you've got excessive fee lawsuits. Here's a story today.
Well, let's go back to your article that you brought up, because I want to ask some questions as the layperson.
Sure.
Because I find this interesting. Let's go back to the top and let's break down some definitions for us. And these might be some sound bites, Nate. First of all, can you define what is ESG investing?
Yeah, so environmental, social, and governance factors. So that in and of itself can be a matter of open to opinion and that type of thing. I think I told this story a long time ago on the podcast, but I'll tell it again briefly for people who are new to the show. But so I was interviewing two investment managers who focused on the ESG space, and any fund manager, I tell them, all right, what's a stock you've added to your portfolio? What's one you've taken out, and why? That's kind of a standard question, and lets them tell a story a little bit. And one of them said, well, for governance reasons, we added this particular major shoe and apparel manufacturer because they had hired a lot of female executives, and that had been a key initiative in their company. So they elevated this in their portfolio, as well as obviously they like the economic prospects of adding this shoe and apparel company. So they added that stock. So in the afternoon, we had another ESG manager come in, and I say, okay, what's somebody you've removed from your portfolio? And they said, well, we absolutely had to remove this shoe and apparel company for governance reasons because of the way the shoes are manufactured overseas and the type of plants and the type of, so for governance reasons, you had two different fund managers exclude and include the same exact company. So that's
based
the
on the
story.
same principle of ESG.
Yes. So
So
based on
ESG
governance factors. Yep.
So ESG, is that just a subjective concept that the individual applies, or is there a body that curates the
No,
ESG standard or what have you?
no, there really is no ESG standard. And there's certain companies that have gone down that path. So if you pull up a fund on Morningstar, we can find here. But if you pull up a fund on Morningstar, it will typically have an ESG rating to it. So you can see that they've sort of gotten into that world with,
but by whose
by their own standards. So
their own measure. Okay. So
yeah,
this is a totally subjective, emotionally driven concept.
yep,
And that's
absolutely.
a wonderful premise to invest on.
Yeah. So even Morningstar has an ESG screener, so you can screen by certain funds, so or by certain things that are important to you. So
So
you may,
go ahead.
yeah, you may care about something. You may care about environmental issues, but you may not care about governance issues, or you might feel that that's not going to affect investment performance.
But you
So,
might care about environmental issues, but be misinformed.
oh,
So,
that's true too. Yeah.
my point is, for example, Elon Musk was railing against ESG maybe 8 months ago, 6 months ago, and laughing because I don't know. Forgive me for being ignorant, but either a fund or a measuring body or some important body um, basically put Tesla outside and said that, or rated them much lower than Shell and oil companies.
Yeah.
And of course, the echo chamber that I occupy was completely up in arms because it's hysterical that an oil company digging for oil to be burned is somehow cleaner and greener or more ESG-ish than the company that's kind of single-handedly instigated the green or battery transportation revolution.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that was so that story was earlier this year. This is with the S&P 500. So if you're familiar with Standard and Poor's, they put out the S&P 500 list, and they have a separate list, which is their ESG index. And Tesla
Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah. And Tesla was removed from the index. And Exxon is still the biggest company in that index.
So again, Standard and Poor is a company, and it is their subjective evaluation that they curate that ESG index.
Yep.
Okay. So there you go. So that's really interesting. So then so we've kind of defined ESG investing. So now kind of bring that back to this article. Fiduciaries may but not must consider ESG. And how is the Department of Labor relevant here?
So the Department of Labor is they were the government agency that was put in charge of providing some guidance. So that's what DOL is always producing guidance, and for plan sponsors and for fiduciaries to plans. So they initially had the governance that said it should be a factor and then shouldn't be a factor, and now this is their latest guidance, which plays it down the middle, and I think is probably the right way to do it.
So the Department of Labor that issues guidance for how plan administrators conduct themselves based on the input of their who are the subordinates, the shareholders or
so
participants.
So if you run a business and you've got 30 employees, you have a fiduciary responsibility to provide the best retirement plan you can for your employees. So that's what your task is, because the employees are they have to go ahead and invest in the type of program that you offer. So you're supposed to put together the best program to the best of your ability, not what your neighbor who sells boat insurance tells you
Right.
to
Right.
put your plan into. So so there's certain guidance for that, and the idea being that if there's any sort of issue and the employees complain, you can pull out your file and say, I followed this Department of Labor guidance. Here's my quarterly
So
meetings. Here's my blah blah blah.
so if
So
I'm
it's
reading the tea leaves, this article implies that plan participants may come to the plan administrator, who is the fiduciary, and say, I want you to put more weight of our investments on ESG companies, right?
well, so they can do that, but it's not.
And
It's
this article,
not. They're not supposed to factor that in. So they're talking here about participant preferences. Um, so they can take that into an account, but they don't necessarily have to cave to what the employees want to
and
do.
that's the crux of this article.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's sorry, the layperson. I'm just trying to kind of
I
wrap my
know.
mind around the structure.
Yeah.
So the business owner or plan administrator, is administering the funds. You have plan participants who may go to the plan administrator and say, because of my conscience, I want to make sure that I'm investing more in ESG friendly companies. And the plan administrator takes guidance and leadership from the Department of Labor. And this article is saying to plan administrators, hey, if your participants are pressuring you to direct the funds of the plan into with ESG companies, you don't have to necessarily buckle to that criteria or imperative.
Correct. Right. And
Okay,
ultimately there has to be an investment thesis behind it. So you can't
I'm
say,
getting to that.
yeah, I'm a tree hugger, so I'm gonna put in all these ESG funds and let them
That's
dominate the line.
exactly
You
that's
can't do
exactly what I
that.
was getting to.
But if your investment thesis is going forward, oil companies are going to be a terrible investment because nobody's using oil.
Ben and Jerry's or Ben and Jerry's staffers in Vermont go to the plan administrator after seeing that they're invested in the S&P's ESG index, where Shell Oil is the leading company, and they say, of course, the index is performing well, but the folks in and what are the in Birkenstocks
Mhm.
are say, we want to invest in I don't know, hemp-based windmill, production company X,
Yeah,
and of course the earnings on that company look maybe completely shaky, and the CEO was just indicted for some sort of prostitution ring or whatever, and but yet the Birkenstocks want no, that's where we want our money to go.
right.
So this
Yeah,
article is basically saying, hey, like you don't have to that is not enough criteria to bend to the will of the plan participants.
yeah.
Am I reading that right?
Yep, that's correct. Yeah. Yep. Ultimately, you have to do what's in the best interest of your plan because your employees may not know what's in their own best interest, right? So that's part of the role of being a fiduciary, is to be the adult in the room.
Right. Right. And that's
Sometimes,
really and it's really scary, this whole ESG thing, which in concept is a positive thing. It is a we all want to save the planet. We all want fair and equal treatment of individuals, and we all don't want to buy products from companies that are using child labor. And those are all the issues. Some of the issues are surrounding the ESG, but seemingly there's a problem with this framework, that it seems completely subjective. There is no standard, there is no metric, so it could be completely, it's just seems completely subjective, and that seems like a really difficult way to manage your
I know.
investment.
I know, because if you're anybody who thinks about these sort of thing, and it's funny you should bring up Ben and Jerry's because that was considered a very left-leaning company, but they produce a very elitist product that most people can't afford. It's this little tiny, it's a high-end product. So in that aspect, it's not necessarily the most socially conscious, and it's not a very healthy food to begin with. So you've got the obesity crisis factoring in there. You've got a product that is very expensive, cost per gallon, or however you want to break it down there. So yeah, there's a lot that factors in there, and there's no There's no open and shut case on that. You can even make the case, as some people have, not necessarily my opinion, but it's like, all right, well, if you've got Exxon, that's the biggest energy company in the world, and they're trying to change, maybe we should be investing in them to give them the ability to get into these other areas and help them right their wrongs. It doesn't do anybody any good if Exxon goes out of business and they're not able to continue down some of the paths that they're going down for cleaner energy. So
Right. I mean, even Netflix had to continue mailing DVDs while they transitioned to streaming. So,
mhm,
they got to drill, baby, drill until they can. I don't know what their investment is in alternative, but anecdotally, I think they're spending money on wind and solar. I mean, it seems completely unprudent of them not to be doing that. If I were an energy manufacturer, it seems obvious that I would want to go to something that was renewable because the thing that you're selling is free.
right. Right, I know. It's crazy, but yeah, it's fun to think about as I pull up the Morningstar rating on Exxon's ESG rating. It's
Can you
they
show
have
it?
yeah, so they have it three. So they're famous for their star rankings, right? 5-star being good. They have an ESG rating of two planets. So 2 planets out of 5, 2 Earths out of 5. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's interesting. We'll see where it goes. There's a bunch of different companies who've come out with different indexes and different products, and then of course you've got the wise guys of the industry who have uh, done the opposite. So they'll say, we'll invest in all the companies that are anti ESG and some of the worst companies out there. That sort of stuff. So, anyways, pretty interesting stuff.
So the news that I bring to the table today, I was thinking, I can't. I mean, obviously, like my interests these days are in the green transportation revolution, um, and I was really excited to see that Thursday. We've talked about cruise before in the past, right?
Yeah.
Thursday. So, well, let me just set some background. Cruise is GM. Is it? I think. Yeah, Waymo
Yeah.
is Google. Cruise is GM's self-driving division. Now, despite what Elon Musk has everybody believing, they are not necessarily ahead of the robo taxi revolution. They are not even monetizing robo taxis or self-driving right now, with the exception of selling beta software to their car customers.
Mhm.
Whereas Waymo is running self-driving taxi service in Phoenix, Arizona. Cruise, the self-driving division of GM, is operating in San Francisco, and has been for a good portion of this year. But they started running their service at night in San Francisco, where traffic volume and pedestrian volume was obviously reduced. And on Thursday, they announced that they have started running daytime service in San Francisco. Now, they did have a map. I don't know if this article shows. Here's the map.
Mm.
So if you're familiar with San Francisco's geography, I think this is the Golden Gate Bridge, if I think something like that. But this was the nighttime map that they've been running, and this is the daytime map here that they've added. And of course, I mean, just like all things, it's going to continue to expand over time. And this headline just makes me so excited. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it is definitely excited. There's no question that that's the wave of the future. And it's kind of interesting to follow the cars versus the trucks, right? So we've had trucks that are working on the highway piece and have been relatively successful. And then we've got the cars that are scooting around San Francisco, figuring out that piece of it as well. So when that all comes together, I think it'll be fairly exciting. I think most passengers would be more likely to be confident in the highway portion of it, at least right away. I mean, most newer cars, I mean, geez, they're pretty close to being self-driving. I mean,
Yeah, we've talked a
obviously
lot
everyone
on
knows
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. A
um,
lot of new cars have lane keeping, lane
mhm,
assist. We just
yeah.
rented a 2022 fully loaded minivan last week. My in-laws are in town, and it was a really modern car, but it didn't have lane keeping. We went to Boston in it, and we did some highway driving, and it has the lane nudge,
Mhm,
where and I tested it. Like I let the car drift a little bit, and it did detect the line, and it did nudge, but
mhm.
it didn't have authority,
Right.
So
Which you
I
don't
had,
want. You don't
huh?
want. You don't want, because that could get ugly. So
Well,
so
no, I mean the lane keeping, there's two different versions of lane keeping, right? There's lane keeping where it will do the driving for you. You're just attending it.
mhm,
And then there's this like one step down, which is what we had in the minivan, which was the nudge. Like
yeah,
it's like in case you looked away, it will give you a little nudge back, but then it started blinking and yelling at me like aggressively. Like I was the driver, not the car.
right, right. Um, yeah, and you have to be careful with that. I have to. So you're driving down the road, somebody's making a left, you're going off to the side to go around that person. So I've had to train myself when I'm in the Volvo to give a little bit of extra room, because I know the car Volvo's going to try to steer me into the rear end of that car making the left, because it thinks I'm going off the road. It doesn't necessarily realize that that car in front of me is making a left. So yeah, you have to. It's another learning thing that you got to get around, and it's something the cars will have to work on. But
Yeah, I'm if my predictions ring true, that this is like, to me, the reason why this is so exciting, and I've said this 100 times, but um, this is like watching broadband come in the 90s. I don't know
mhm,
if you remember how that was when
sure.
we were on dial up, and nobody really knew what broadband was, but it was a faster internet, DSL cable. I remember our first cable modem was like this big with these
Hmm.
mega fins on the thing, cooling fins on it. It was like massive, and we were like, "Wow, we're going to get internet over the cable," and we just didn't understand. Um, but watching that kind of come, and fiber is still kind of like that. We have fiber here, but fiber is not still ubiquitous everywhere, so they're still
Correct.
rolling that out. But this is a lot like that, in that it's out west. It's where the technology is happening, and to me, I'm like, I cannot wait for that to hit the Hartford County, right?
Mhm,
Um, and the reason being is I just had my 14-year-old 212,000-mile Pathfinder serviced, and
mhm,
it's the probably the best 14-year-old Pathfinder out there, because I keep it in good shape. It's always garaged. My service guy said, "Wow, you really had a drop off." No, not surprising. I'm only driving a third now because of COVID and that sort of thing.
yeah.
Um, so I'm only driving 5,000 miles a year, 5,000 miles a year in my car.
Mhm,
And if self-driving taxis become ubiquitous, and they are, based on this, I mean, this is a this is a s- this is not a, what do they say? You can't rejar this. You know what I mean? Like, you can't put the
mhm.
lid back on this. This is
Put the
coming.
toothpaste back in the tube, right?
Yeah, you can't put toothpaste back in the tube. Exactly. So I'm like, wow, once this comes, like, I get rid of the car, or I'll just keep the car and use it for
Mm.
bare minimum things. But um, yeah, we'll just call a ride everywhere we go.
Yeah,
There's-
and you brought up a couple interesting points there about sort of unintentionally, maybe about the service and stuff, and obviously the people are thinking about being in the car and the car doing things with them in the car, but there's the other side of it about the car doing things well they're not in it, right? I mean, going for an oil change and whatever. Like, I would love my garage to open at midnight and have my car go for an oil change and be back by the time I get up, right? I mean, that
exactly.
is actually a safer step that you could see happening in between before. The government might say, hey, you know what, we're going to allow these cars between midnight and 4 a.m. without passengers. Maybe that's an in between step, and you got 24-hour Jiffy Lubes rocking and rolling. But I mean, that's something where they could test it a little bit. You got some night in there, you've got fewer people in the cars, but so that's
All that's coming. I think we're gonna leapfrog over that. I mean, so EVs are eliminating the need for oil changes and those kind of
well, yeah.
routine maintenances, right? So that's gonna kind of leapfrog that. But I've, you and I've kind of friendly debated back and forth, like, once this comes, private ownership of vehicle becomes unnecessary.
Mhm.
I won't have to insure my car, maintain my car, store my car. People don't realize there's like, I don't know if you have stuff. Like I'm a reformed hoarder, so I work really hard to not have stuff anymore.
Mhm.
But people don't realize, like, when you have stuff, you have to, there's a cost to that. There's an
Sure.
emotional cost, but there's obviously a monetary cost, because of course you have to have a big enough, you know, dwelling to hold your stuff. And it's like, if you drive through a typical American neighborhood, 2-car garages everywhere, like, you're paying for the land and that structure and the associated tax footprint of those 2-car garages, right? I mean, people don't realize this for a resource that you use. I think, what's the usage statistic of a typical automobile in the household? It's like, it goes unused like 95% of its life. You buy
Mhm.
a vehicle, and your car and my car are both doing nothing, and they'll do nothing for most of the day. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Mhm.
So the autonomous driving, and robo taxis, when they come, I mean, it just gets me so excited, because it's like, just pull up your app, schedule, the app will even read your calendar, and if you populate the location field of your calendar items and things like that, you just invoke a car, it'll be out there waiting for you, no rush, no whatever. You're in a late modeled, highly maintained uh, vehicle or asset that you don't own. You're paying kind of micro payments for the usage that you're using, and then you get out of it, and you never have to worry about that thing again. It's
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Yeah. My concern about that is I relate it back to sort of the TV model when everybody was so excited. It's going to be so exciting to get rid of all these 500 cable channels that I don't need and be able to buy it piece by piece. And it's going to be subscription based. I'm going to save all this money. It's not going to happen. I mean, you're going to have to pay these subscription fees that are going to be close to your car payment now. I mean, there's no, you think that these technologies are going to save you money, but the money's going to go somewhere. So
it's
from a cost
interesting.
saving standpoint, I can see it a little bit, but I wouldn't trust it quite yet. And we're already seeing it with a lot of the subscription stuff in cars and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, but
they'll still find a way to vacuum money out of your wallet.
it definitely will be a profit venture for the operators, for sure. I'm not
Yeah.
sure you're comparing apples to apples, but I don't. You're obviously not wrong. Like, I know I'm paying for all these $6 subscriptions per month, and the total effect is probably the same as a cable bill, or more maybe. Um, but choice, I can always jettison one or two services, and I'm still getting more choice. So that is an improvement over a $65 a month cable package, where it's just like, here you go.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm looking forward to it for sure. I just, as one more comment on it, when we went to Boston last week in this rented minivan, we used Turo, by the way, which is really cool. It's like the
Mhm.
Airbnb for vehicles. People are taking their privately owned vehicles and making them available for rent. Uh, and it was really easy, really, really a nice experience. Um, but I'm usually the driver in the family, and I'll really stretch my comfort in order to be the driver, so everybody else can be comfortable. And I was really tired. I drove us up to Boston. We spent the day there. We did a duck tour for the first time, which was really cool, and we went to the science museum, which was very cool. And yeah, I was just kind of burnt out, and my wife was all too happy. She's a driver too. She likes to drive. She has no problem with driving, and so she drove us home, and I opted to sit in the kind of captain's chairs in the second row of this
Oh,
minivan.
okay.
And it was just like, I kind of just let my mind go to that, like, robo taxi fantasy, and I'm like, this
Mhm.
is, I don't know if you, I mean, I presume you're probably the driver too in your family, right? But
Yes.
I don't
Yep.
know when the last time you sat in the back seat and you just kind of went along for the ride.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while. I'll always qualify that by saying it has nothing to do with the fact that my wife's driving ability, because she's actually a very good driver. I'm just not a good passenger.
Yeah, me
So I
too.
don't. Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
total
So
control freak, totally.
yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
like, kind of like but when I take the train, I don't know when the last time you took a train, but when you get on the train, and you're just kind of along for the ride, you're
Mhm.
looking out the window, you're able to look at your phone, talk to your friends and family. when you kind of like let that go and you kind of embrace that, of course, and that's what everybody who lives in a city is like, yeah, duh, like public tran, like you're along for the ride,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But middle America, like where you and I exist, we're the auto nation,
Hmm.
but I don't know. I'm kind of evolving. I think I'm evolving from where I once was. When I drive now on the highway, my wife and kids tease me because I'm like doing just a speed limit, maybe 5 under, and I'm in the right, and I'm just like shaking my fist angrily at all the crazies on the road. It's pretty
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. Yeah. We did a couple hour trip on Saturday. We went down to see my niece in her play, which she did really well in. But we had left a bunch of time in there because we didn't want to be late. So it's normally under normal conditions about an hour and a half drive, but we gave over 2 hours. But and I was cruising along at my normal speed, and I'm like, well, we're still going to get there early. There's no traffic, so I just did that and sort of settled in and set the cruise at the speed limit and sat in the right lane. And it is an eye-opening experience because you're like, man, people are flying.
Crazy,
If you drive the speed
crazy.
limit, you feel like a disabled vehicle, like you should have
Totally,
your flashers on or something. It's crazy,
totally.
unbelievable.
It is unbelievable for sure. Oh, the minivan had adaptive cruise control. For the first time I actually spent some time behind adaptive cruise control, and
Okay.
that was you must have that in your new
Yeah,
car,
both
right?
our cars have that. Yeah, and it's yeah, we like that. I use that feature quite a bit.
Yeah, that's
We
pretty
like
neat.
that. You
Pretty
have
neat.
to, yeah, it's a learning experience. You have to get a feel for because you can change the distance
Following
in between the
distance.
car in front of you.
Yeah.
And if you don't have it right, people just end up jumping in front of you your whole time, and
Yep.
then your car breaks, and you're like, I didn't really need to brake there. I got this, but
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. So I
yeah,
have a couple other things. I mean, we're pretty good on time. I'll just say that one of the other things that I've been kind of uh, from my green thumb view is as wonderful as EVs are, you know, they are not completely green. In fact, there is a carbon footprint to
yeah,
electric vehicles, and that is in the form of mining the raw material for the steel and the minerals to make the batteries. And these obviously that these caterpillars type vehicles, which historically spew all of the diesel, and it's not a clean experience. um, I was really excited to see that this headline here from yesterday is Caterpillar demonstrates first electric mining truck. And so we already have JB Strobel, who is a former CTO of Tesla. uh, he started Redwood Industries, I think, which is a company that is dealing with the recycle of the batteries. So we're able to recycle the batteries and recover. They're able to recover 95% of the materials to reuse in batteries. So that's kind of on the end side of the life cycle, but it's really exciting to see. And it's not surprising that this is here because it's coming, but it's when you look at Toyota and Honda and even GM a few years ago, and BMW, like you see the resistance that the legacy OEMs have um, inserted into the electrification of their industry. I wasn't, you're not sure like how fast the likes of Caterpillar and Volvo are moving to electrify their industrial fleet. You know what I mean? And it was just exciting to see this headline.
right, right. And it is like we talked about the whole episode, the conflict of okay, well these are trucks whose sole purpose is essentially to destroy the environment and take things out of it, but they're green doing it. But it's funny when you pull this off. I'll have to sidetrack here for a tiny second, but uh, it's amazing the sheer size of some of these vehicles that people
Oh
don't
yeah.
totally comprehend. So I pulled up this picture while you were talking.
Oh
Those
my
are
god.
enormous, enormous vehicles. I mean, it's crazy to think of how big those things are. But
Yeah.
as a father of a son who's like obsessed with or was obsessed with watching like all those trucks, like we ended up just pulling them up on YouTube and just looking at some of those videos, and shocked at how big these things are with
I've been around these my whole childhood. My father was in the construction industry, and he operated all those.
yeah. Yeah, these things are just massive, but anyway, I just thought that was, kind of funny, but it is interesting to think about, and also where the raw materials come from and who has them, and then you're going down we've been buying oil from less than savory countries for so long, and now where are we getting our lithium from, and do we have it here? And then it gets into, you're back to all sorts of mining issues within the continental US and not in my backyard and all
Not in
that
my
sort of.
backyard, right?
Yep. So, but round and around we go, right? But
Yeah, that's
ultimately,
right.
it all comes back to consumption, which I feel like sometimes has been kind of lost in all this stuff. It's like, all right, let's get greener, let's get greener, but we still drive way more than we need to. We still use way more than we need to, and it doesn't matter how good your light bulb's on. It's like turn the light off when you leave the room, right? I mean, and I feel like as we get, more cost effective on that, and it still has to be a little bit more focus on consumption, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking the other day about how 10 years ago, the death of the incandescent.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, we don't think about it now, but 10 years ago, that was a migration, right? Or a kind of a evolution of moving from incandescent light bulbs. How many incandescents do you have around the house?
Oh, I don't know. We still probably have some because when we moved in, there were some here, and we just kind of waited them out, and they're still in. But I mean, we're going to see it this weekend, right? We went to cheaper lighting, more efficient lighting. So what does everybody do? They got a billion bulbs in their house this weekend and outside, right? So it's that same sort of thing. It's like we think it's going to be less expensive, and we think we're going to use, but we won't.
Right, right.
We'll just ramp it up to fill the void. Busy time of year. We had a lot of doing some participant meetings, which is good. So people sort of getting their stuff in. There's been a lot of turnover too. So we're doing a lot of enrollment meetings, some stuff
Hmm.
online, some stuff in person, which is good. Something that's come up fairly recently and more frequently, and I think it's semi-COVID related, but a lot of people focusing on their business and what happens to their business if they get hit by a bus, what
Oh,
happens, how they working in the next generation, if that's something the next generation wants to do, whether it's a family thing. So we're having more discussions about business valuation and succession planning, which is kind of interesting. So it's one of those things that's on the periphery of a few different types of industries. Obviously, you're going to get your CPA involved, you're going to get your estate planning attorney involved. So you want to sort of pull all that together, but it usually starts with a business valuation, and there's a few tools to do sort of a simple one just based on the industry and 3 years of tax returns, and then you sort of take it from there if there's franchise stuff involved and whatever. So that's come up a little bit more frequently lately, which is fun. It's kind of interesting to have those discussions, and it's good to see continuity among businesses, especially if they're local businesses, because you hate to hear how there's a tragic situation and then it's compounded by this restaurant has to close because they don't know what to do. So
right.
that stuff's kind of interesting.
That's cool. That's cool. What about business development?
Business development, really not a lot. It's been mostly service stuff. We've been doing some kind of talk to you a little bit back and forth, but it's always about different systems and trying to figure out what's better off the shelf versus doing yourself sort of thing. So
Oh, right.
a lot of the systems we have don't talk to each other. Some of it's just they're far behind, or some of it's intentional where they want you to be the data source, and just try to work out some of that stuff, which can be kind of fun. I
Yeah,
kind of
you're
like
sending
that
me a
anyway.
text message
So
about API connects with the
yeah,
state database.
yeah, and well, yeah, that one too, but
That's
just
cool.
with the and that's kind of on the prospecting side, but trying to streamline some stuff, and actually this afternoon we're going to send out a survey, so it's going to be client survey and participant survey, just to kind of get a feel for what type of communications they want next year. You don't want to bombard them with, weekly emails about how their account did and that kind of stuff, unless it's something that they're interested
That's
in. So I'm going to put together 5 or 6 questions, and then maybe that'll lead to doing another survey kind of mid-December. You don't want to make them too long because then people won't do them. So I
yep.
think probably 5 or 6 questions is kind of the max there. So um,
I just
maybe,
started thinking about that yesterday, actually,
yeah.
sending a survey out to the clients.
Yeah, not necessarily a client satisfaction thing, although there'll
Right.
be a kind of a free box at the end. But I think it's going to just be more like communications, a little bit on the type of content you want to see. Do you want to see more investment related, or do you want to see more budgeting, cash flow? Do you want to see, more, or even extended periphery, like interviews with authors or people kind of on the outside? You want to see a little bit more of that. So it'll be interesting to see what comes back.
What about polling them about their pain points and their needs?
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna be something too, just kind of a general, what else would you like to see added? It's tough because a lot of them don't know what's out there. You're a lot of times you're dealing with, um, less sophisticated investors or whatever, and if you ask them, whatever. So there might be, if it's maybe educational terms, I could give them an example of, like, what is a mutual fund or something like that, and see if they'd be interested in that. Um, a question on, types of content. Do you prefer video or audio or both? What type of video are you likely to watch? 5 minute, 10 minute, 15, something like that.
Right.
So I got an outline of that. I think I'll be able to get that out today. So it'll be something along the lines of, giving thanks to you as a client, to thank you for a good year of service, but also looking ahead to next year, as we
Right.
formulate our communication practices and service models. What would you like to see? I thought there'd be a resurgence of in-person meetings, but I haven't had a ton of call for that. But we'll see. Maybe participants want it, and maybe the employer doesn't. So sometimes you get that sort of disconnect too.
I for one never want to go back to in-person meetings, at least from a business development and relationship management standpoint. It's just, from a technologist standpoint, it's wholly inefficient.
Right.
Um, it's even easier to pull in all stakeholders, so much easier in a virtual, in a Teams meeting, Zoom meeting, because everybody can be wherever they are.
Hmm.
And one of the biggest challenges I've always had is getting all the leaders and stakeholders in the conference room at the same time. And so I'm definitely happy. COVID was, it's odd to say that COVID had any positive to it, but, being the optimist, we were able to expand nationally and kind of, I think, provide the service we knew we could provide if the clients were willing to interface with us virtually, you
Right.
know? So that's really been a boon for us. As everybody knows on the channel, we didn't really have an aggressive sales and marketing apparatus in our business,
Mhm.
and that's what I've been building out this year. And it's been such an exciting ride. Our business, from a revenue standpoint, has already seen a 25% bump. From a personnel standpoint, we've already um, nearly doubled the size of the company. So there's kind of a build out, and then a wait. Then the revenue kind of
Mhm.
follows. And that's been really exciting. So we're actually, the sales and marketing resources we're using internally are also, we're actually leveraging and building a new line of business for our clients. So all of the marketing efforts that we're doing for ourselves, we're extending to our clients, because the common question we invariably get from all of our clients is, "Hey, do you guys do websites too?"
Right.
you know that question has come from every single client over the 15 years we've been in business. So we used to try to find a trusted referral source that we would just refer that out to. We tried to do it in-house a number of years ago, and that was kind of an underwhelm. If we're not doing it great, we're not going to do it. We're
Mhm.
going to find the best resource for our clients. That's our core kind of tenant. So I'm really excited because I have really like a crack team of digital marketers, web marketers, web developers, and we have content. We have 3 copywriters on the team, an editor, graphic designer. Um, yeah, it's really been exciting, and we're doing a lot of like rolling our sleeves up and getting into like real SEO.
Mhm.
I mean,
Right.
everybody gets a spam email and pop-ups and solicitations for SEO management, and I've even tried to engage those resources before. And what we're doing is just nothing like those fly-by-night SEO offers.
Right.
We're actually doing SEO, and SEO really is just content marketing, and
Mhm.
the key is content, which is the Google and the algorithms will elevate you um, in the various listings if you're producing useful content,
Mhm.
valued content. I spend some of my time on our social media channels, and like on Instagram. I don't know if you do this or notice this, but a lot of our followers and co-followers, which are other businesses, potential customers of ours, a lot of and we were guilty of this too. We were guilty of this for a lot of years. Their posts on social are, look, we're great because this, we're great
Mhm.
because this, we're great because, just a new way that they're wonderful, like seems to be like it seems intuitive, like because you're trying to promote, right? You're like, the idea is
Sure.
I'm here to promote, so we're great because, but that's not what the world wants. That's not really
Mhm.
what's valuable. That's not what's useful to somebody who has a pain or a need, right?
Right.
So content marketing and SEO, and that applies to social media and blogging and things. Putting content out there that solves problems, that helps people, and then by virtue, that's how you get elevated as kind of the thought leader or the subject matter expert in the
Mhm.
search engines and things like that. And then you your searcher, if they can self-help, fine, but most often they s- you're validating that you can help them, and really what they're going to want to do is hire you to help them.
Right.
So that's been kind of an aha moment for me this year. Building this marketing team has been a lot of fun. Getting a little nervous that we need to expand our technical team.
Mhm.
We have some openings on that side, and I remember years ago we put a listing up, and we would just get just cascaded, we just flooded
Mhm.
with applicants, and that has turned into a trickle.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't know where all the IT guys and gals are, but they're not banging down our door. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on out there. So um, I'm confident that we'll find the right persons and people to join our team, but it's still interesting to kind of see the changes in the atmosphere out there.
Yeah, do you find that, maybe a lot of the talent, went west or went big in search of, landing that Facebook job, that Google job, that tech job? Do you feel like that or not?
No, in fact, I think it's kind of the opposite. I think everybody went solopreneur.
Oh, okay.
I think everybody tried their hand at YouTubing or Bitcoin or
Mhm.
I've even seen some of my friends out there start their own businesses, and
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know. Some people seem to have gone solo in so many ways. You know, just to kind of lead into the news that we'll talk about. One of the things is Silicon Valley is seeing a mass wave of layoffs. So I don't know if that will help my situation, but our resources still 90% of 80% of what we do is remote, but we still have kind of a boots on the ground component to our
Mhm.
services.
Right.
So there's a geographic component when we have a client who calls us from a distant geographic region that we don't have a full-time resource in that area. We do have a method where we engage a local IT talent, and we
Okay.
subcontract anytime that 10% we need hands and boots on the ground. um, it's funny that that model is a lot of clients still don't like that model, but since COVID, a lot more clients have started coming around saying, okay, my relationship is with EVERNET. We
Mhm.
trust Eric, we trust Doug, we trust the EVERNET team. If you guys find a local asset here that I don't have to otherwise manage for the few times that
Mhm.
we need something on site, that's fine. So that's been a boon for us too. So
Right. And chances are in their own business, they've had to go that route as well too. So many people are finding that it's difficult to hire people and hire people locally. So I think they get it.